So, today we're diving into Europe's full-blown panic over Trump's peace plan, Germany slapping security tags on chocolate bars because shoplifting is completely out of control, a massive European investment scheme for Africa that'll make your head spin, an unprecedented confrontation brewing in Washington as Trump demands arrests of Democratic Congress members, and a mysterious bird flu case that just claimed its first victim in the United States. And trust me, I've saved the most unsettling revelation for the very end of this episode. I spent years inside one of the most powerful media organizations you can name, watching editors twist facts to serve agendas, watching truth get buried under corporate interests and political pressure. I walked away from all that. Now I answer to no editorial board, I work for no one but you, and I tell you what's actually happening while everyone else is busy spinning narratives. And speaking of truth, this kind of independent journalism takes serious work. We spend hours fact-checking every single detail to make sure you're not getting fed the usual garbage. If you appreciate that, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and if you're able, consider sponsoring us. It genuinely means everything, because this is how we keep the lights on and keep bringing you real information. And please watch until the very end, because what I'm about to reveal in the final segment will completely reframe everything you think you know about what's coming next. So let's start with what's sending shockwaves through every European capital right now. Donald Trump's peace plan for Ukraine. European leaders are not just concerned, they're genuinely alarmed, and they're not hiding it anymore. Germany's Chancellor Friedrich Merz has already issued a warning to the American president, cautioning him against trying to end the war in Ukraine without European consent. Now, Merz didn't walk up to Trump and say this to his face. Instead, he chose to make his position clear at the G20 summit, a summit where the world's biggest player, the United States, didn't even bother showing up. They simply didn't consider it necessary to participate. But if you want to understand why Europe is truly worried, you need to listen to Manfred Weber. He's the chairman of the European People's Party faction in the European Parliament, and he didn't mince words. Weber called for substantial changes to the American peace plan and emphasized something critical. He said, "We are at a historical moment, and this is not about Ukraine. This is about the security of all of us." Then he dropped this bomb. "We must turn the European Union into a European NATO. We can no longer rely on the United States unconditionally." In other words, Europe is preparing to think about itself first, and time is running out. That's the explanation given by the leader of the European People's Party, someone who's extremely close to European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen. And here's where it gets even more interesting. French President Emmanuel Macron also weighed in, noting that many aspects of this plan directly affect Europeans, and crucially, this plan was never coordinated with Europeans. Macron emphasized that point, and as everyone knows, no plan will ever satisfy him anyway. But here's the thing. This reaction was entirely predictable. Leaders of European states, European institutions, and G7 countries, minus the US obviously, were always going to express disagreement with parts of the peace plan being proposed by the United States for Ukraine. What's really rattling cages in Brussels right now is that Trump's peace plan has already cast doubt on the European Union's entire scheme to use frozen Russian assets for Ukraine. Everything had been calculated in advance. All the numbers lined up perfectly, and now it's all up in the air. We'll see what happens next. The intrigue is absolutely thick. But what most people are missing is how this connects to what's happening inside Germany itself. Because while European leaders are panicking about American plans, inside Germany, public support for the ruling coalition has collapsed to a historic low. Only 22% of German citizens view the government of Friedrich Merz positively. 22%. That's according to the latest polling data. And just to give you context, back on November 7th of this year, that number stood at 24%. So we're watching a steady decline, and there's not even the slightest hint that this percentage will improve. 64% of those surveyed are dissatisfied with the Chancellor himself. And if we're speaking broadly, in France, Germany, and Britain specifically, the leaders of these countries have the lowest levels of public support from their citizens. That already tells you everything. They are, in fact, leaders of the minority. They're governing without mandates, without real popular backing, and everyone can see it. Now let me transition to something that's creating absolute chaos in Germany, and it's being discussed everywhere. This is fascinating and deeply disturbing at the same time. German authorities have announced that between 24 and 24.5 million shoplifting incidents go unnoticed every year in retail stores. Think about that number for a second. In response, supermarkets are implementing maximum security measures, and even relatively inexpensive items are now under protection. Here's what I mean. Yellow security tags are now being placed on Mars and Twix chocolate bars that cost just over €3. If someone tries to walk out with one of these candy bars without going through the checkout, alarms go off. When the famous German publication Bild reached out to the international supermarket chain Lidl about this chocolate bar security situation, they received only a generic response. The company stated they apply standard measures to prevent theft, and this is now common practice throughout the German retail sector. That was the representative's answer. These are our modern realities. You can't escape them. And here's something worth noting. Chocolate is one of the products in supermarkets where prices have risen most dramatically recently, supposedly due to increased raw material costs. At least that's the official explanation they're giving everyone. But wait, because there's another development in Germany that connects to a much larger pattern. It has now been revealed that nearly two-thirds of German citizens support government plans to require all men of a certain age to undergo medical examinations to determine their fitness for military service. The majority of Germans, according to research, favor returning to a military registration system. 62% of respondents stated they somewhat or completely approve of this initiative. That's the result we're seeing. So let me connect these dots for you, because this is where things get fascinating. You've got a government with historically low approval ratings, a society dealing with unprecedented retail theft that's forcing security tags on candy bars, and simultaneously a population that's willing to accept mandatory military fitness examinations. What does that tell you about the underlying anxiety in German society right now? What does it reveal about how people perceive the future? Keep that question in your mind, because we're about to see how this connects to something even bigger. And this brings us to what Ursula von der Leyen announced at the G20 summit, which, as you know, was held in Africa for the first time. The head of the European Commission declared to everyone that Europe is launching an initiative called the Global Gateway. This is an investment program for Africa worth €150 billion. You heard that correctly. 150 billion. The stated goal is simple: to change the imbalance and give the continent new opportunities. World leaders, and please take note of this, also committed to allocating €15.5 billion specifically for renewable energy development in Africa. We're not talking about empty promises here. We're talking about real money, serious money. According to this plan, there will be solar panels, wind farms, and other new projects designed to transform Africa's energy landscape completely. But here's the irony of the moment, and it's almost comical if it weren't so serious. Europe itself is struggling with energy crises. They don't hide this fact. Yet at the same time, they're investing enormous resources in Africa to build a green future there. Think about that for a moment. Your own house is on fire, but you're funding renovations for your neighbor's mansion. The Global Gateway isn't just a program, it's an attempt by European leadership to demonstrate that they can be global players who change the rules of the game. €150 billion represents massive resources. Naturally, everything was calculated well in advance. Africa, predictably, is completely on board with both hands raised. But here's where the American situation enters the picture, and trust me, this is where things get genuinely explosive. In the United States, the American president is absolutely furious. He's in a state of rage after 6 Democratic Congress members released a video calling on military personnel and intelligence officers to refuse what they termed illegal orders from Donald Trump. That was the exact formulation, and it's completely unacceptable. Essentially, these individuals called for ignoring the will of the American people, the very people who made their choice in favor of Donald Trump. The American president called this mutinous behavior at the highest level, and he stated that every one of these traitors must be arrested and put on trial. Their words cannot go unanswered. Otherwise, we will no longer have a country, Trump emphasized. An example must be made. That's what Donald Trump declared, adding that the traitors who ordered the military not to obey his directives should already be in prison, not walking around fake news channels trying to explain how their words were acceptable. Furthermore, Many distinguished lawyers in the United States agree that these Democrats, these traitors, as Trump called them, who ordered the military to disobey presidential directives, committed a crime of the most serious magnitude. A terrible offense was committed. That's the scandal we're dealing with. So we're watching closely to see what measures will be taken. Democrats are becoming increasingly brazen. Everyone has noticed this. There's no getting around it. They constantly lie. There are constant information dumps from their side. Information is presented in distorted ways. But for calls like these, it's long past time to hold them accountable. Now, I want you to think about what this means for the separation of powers, what it means for civilian control of the military, what it signals about the temperature in Washington right now. And here's something that caught everyone off guard. Melania Trump gave a speech at a Marine Corps air base. She spoke to soldiers and their families about the future of warfare and artificial intelligence. According to her, artificial intelligence will become a key player on the battlefield, though the deciding factor will always remain human. But to win a war using artificial intelligence, we need to start preparing the new generation right now. Many people were surprised, please note, to hear the First Lady discussing military scenarios of the future, but Melania has a reason. She actually heads the White House Working Group on Artificial Intelligence. This is her area. So this wasn't just a ceremonial appearance, this was someone with actual authority in this domain laying out a vision. And if you're wondering why the First Lady is involved in military AI policy, well, that's a question worth asking. Now let me take you to something that's creating serious concern in public health circles, and honestly, this is the part that makes you wonder what else is coming down the pipeline. In the American state of Washington, the first patient has passed away after contracting a strain of bird flu that had not previously been detected in humans. That's the development we're looking at. According to authorities, a small flock of domestic poultry of various species was discovered in the backyard of the patient's home. The identities of family members are not being disclosed for understandable privacy reasons, but we'll see what happens next. The intrigue here is enormous. Anything could happen at any moment. And these are the information points for today, right now, that speak volumes about where we're headed. So let's recap what we've covered, because these pieces fit together in ways that should concern all of us. Europe is preparing to operate independently of American security guarantees for the first time in generations. Germany's government is losing legitimacy while its society simultaneously supports militarization and struggles with basic social order. The European Union is pouring 150 billion euros into Africa while managing energy crises at home. In Washington, we're seeing an unprecedented confrontation between a president and members of Congress over military loyalty. The First Lady is now a key figure in military AI policy, and we've just seen the first loss of life from a novel bird flu strain. Each of these stories alone would be significant. Together, they paint a picture of systems under enormous stress, of institutions preparing for scenarios they're not discussing publicly, of a world order that's shifting faster than most people realize. Write your thoughts in the comments about everything that's happening and everything I've just shared with you. If this kind of analysis matters to you, hit that like button, subscribe to stay informed, and consider supporting the channel so we can keep doing this work. Because nobody else is going to connect these dots for you. I'll see you tomorrow, and let's hope the news stays manageable, though we both know that's probably wishful thinking. Stay sharp out there.